Everyone. Welcome to Disability Voices United SDP Connect. My name is Christiana Morales. I am the director here at Disability Voices United. It's so good to see everyone. We have a presentation today. We're going to be talking about the directives that came out. But before we get started, I want to introduce, well, I don't really need to introduce her. I think you all know who she is. This is Judy Mark, the president of Disability Voices United, and she's going to do an announcement.
Hi, everybody. I hope you're all well. Uh, I am very saddened to announce and felt that the SDP Connect was the right place to announce this, that our beloved friend Howard McBroom has passed away. Many of you may know Howard. Howard appeared in many of Disability Voices United's conferences, from the very first conference we had on the self-determination program in 2014. Howard has spoken at all of them. Howard was a person with disabilities who was a disability rights activist. He was passionate in favor of the self-determination program. He helped us lobby to make sure that the law passed and to break down barriers to entering the program. I want to turn now. I want to tell you a little bit more about Howard, but I'm going to turn first to his independent facilitator and close friend, Talene Kachadorian, who really I just have to say was heroic. And I also want to introduce you to Tammy Bradley, who just all of the people that Howard loves in the world, and we all loved him. Were surrounding him with love at the end of his life. He passed away last Friday, and I'm going to turn it over to Talene to tell you a little bit more about Howard.
There's a lot of things that we've done difficult in life, yet every time we're faced with a new one, we think like it's the very first time. But it was an honor to work with Howard. It was an honor to take care of him, and it was an honor just to know him. Those of you who had a chance to spend time with him, whether it was through friendship or through his peer-to-peer group or any of the committees that he's been on, you'll know that, and even looking back to individuals that he's gotten to know over the years through his church, from his schooling, whether it was high school and college, people he lived with in the same building, anybody and everybody who had an opportunity to meet Howard was touched by his kindness. I apologize, but they were touched by his kindness, and it was an honor to be able to represent everybody in giving back that kindness to him. His staff was amazing. Tammy and Sunny and Judy and Brian were all amazing backbones for me personally as we went through the steps of taking care of him and the difficult days that he faced in the last 4 months. But overall, the number of visitors he had from his personal life and from Easter Seals and from his church and even regional center, it was just amazing to see everyone come together and make sure that Howard had everything he needed to live the best life he could live in very difficult circumstances. It was amazing to even see how the regional center, Lanterman Regional Center, really stepped up to assist us a lot when it came to the medical piece, and just was a backbone for all of us. So I hope you guys will join us. We're planning to have a celebration of his life sometime in the second half of February. We're waiting for a couple people to come into town, and we want to make some arrangements that are really appropriate for the way that Howard should be remembered. And so bear with us as we work through the details. And as soon as we have that set up, we will let everybody know. It will be open to anyone who wants to participate. Judy, I think you want to talk about the next steps. One of the things that, by the way, just so you know, in the 4 months, I mean, obviously, I've known Howard personally, by the way, for 18 years. When my son first got diagnosed, I met Howard. We sat side by side on the Lanterman board. And that was where I met him first, and then I had a chance to full circle come back and take care of him at the end. But one of the things that we had an opportunity to do was sit down and talk about what he wanted. And one of the things that he was very proud of, being able to leave a legacy behind. And I want Judy to tell you a little bit about that.
So Howard really truly believed in the self-determination program. He believed that it could save the world and that everyone in the world, regardless of disability, should have access to the self-determination program. Even in his last days, he was reciting to me and what should be done to fix the self-determination program and how we could make it available to more people who with mental health disabilities and others. And I can also just say that if Howard were not in the self-determination program, he would have not lived as long as he did. He would have died alone. His quality of life would have been much worse. And it was because he was in the self-determination program that he died with dignity. He asked us at the end, his wishes were to keep his legacy going. So Disability Voices United has created what we're calling the Howard McBroom Fellowship Program. And Howard has left his remaining funds to Disability Voices United to create this program. And we are raising additional funds. And with those funds, we will be hiring people with disabilities to train others on the self-determination program, as well as other issues that he cared deeply about, such as supported decision-making. You should know Howard appeared with me at a Free Britney rally a couple of years ago. So he worked on a lot of issues. He cared deeply to fight against mass shootings and violence and bullying, which he felt he was a victim of bullying for much of his young life. So I'm going to ask my staff, if they haven't already, to put in the chat the link to the Howard to funding to make donations for the Howard McBroom Fellowship Program. We hope that you will do this in his memory and in his honor. I also want to call on Tammy Bradley. Tammy was also one of Howard's close friends and independent facilitators through the self-determination program.
Thank you, Judy. Well, my heart is just broken. I met Howard in 2021, and he had just been in a wheelchair for not too long. And Sunny, bless her heart, paired us together because I'm a seasoned wheelchair user and Howard was new, and we just hit it off. And I really got to know him and his needs, and I really felt like we had such a connection, and I could help him through some of my own personal experiences and how I handled it. And it was the best match that I think it could have been. And I developed this friendship with him that actually helped me with my own disability. He inspired me so much because of his strength. And that will live on in my heart forever. And I just really encourage everybody to spread the word about the Fellowship Fund, because Howard's work was so vital to so many. And his message of the self-determination program is so absolute, because he was able to use self-determination to get to go to his 50th high school reunion just before he got sick. And had he not been in that program, he would not have been able to attend that very important piece of his life and celebrate with his friends. And so I just encourage everyone to really look at that fellowship. It's a wonderful opportunity. And thank you, everyone. Tallene, I just love you to death. You pulled through, and I know it was so hard, and I'm just grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. So I also wanted to mention that Howard had his own blog and website at howardmcbroom.com. You'll see that one of his other good friends, Sunny Charnes, put it in the chat. We urge you to look at his website. it was even in the hospital, he was telling all the nurses, go check out my website, look at my website, because he wanted everybody to know, you know, what his feelings about violence and self-determination were. So we urge you to do that. And we are obviously dedicating today's STP Connect to Howard. Christiana's working on a book on employment and the self-determination program, and we're dedicating the book to Howard as well. He was, just to let everyone know, he was our very first ambassador at DVU. And he was our greatest ambassador, and he was part of the creation of our organization. So thank you all for letting us speak about Howard. It was important to us. And now I'm gonna hand it back to Christiana. Thanks, Christiana.
Oh, thank you. That was beautiful, and I love the photo of him. That was so him. That smile. Oh my God. Okay, so I'm a little verklempt, but we will get this. We're gonna do this. Okay. So we only have one quick announcement before we get into our presentation. So let me share my screen really quickly. We want to remind everybody that if you are a local volunteer advisory committee member, we have a once a month meeting. This is only for the LVAC members, and we meet on the first Tuesday of every month from 6 to 7:30. We also have a Slack for people to share information. And so this is really an opportunity for LVAC members to be able to talk amongst each other and find out how they're using their money, their funding, finding out challenges they're having, wins they're having. So just sharing ideas and seeing how we can work together. So I encourage any LVAC member to come to this. And if you want to join the Zoom, you can email me. So the link for this will be in the chat. And I'm going to stop sharing for 1 second as I open up our presentation for the day. Okay. Hey, here we go. So today we are going to talk about the directives that came out. So there were 3, but now 4, because one just came out, directives that we're going to talk about. And I can't think of a better way to explain them than they were meaty. There is just a lot in them. And, you know, one of them I had to read a dozen times, and I still think I might have missed some stuff. So the purpose of this is for us as a group to kind of really go through these directives, think about the importance of what was in them and talk about them, and then to answer a lot of questions. We want to make sure that everybody has a chance to ask questions, and so we can discuss these directives. The first one I'm going to talk about is the billing requirements for services. And this was the December 26th, 2023 directive. The link to it is going to be in the chat if you want to read the actual directive. This one is an important, and it's a helpful directive. It didn't quite go as far as we were hoping that it would, but it is a step in the right direction. What this directive, really the purpose of it is that people were having problems accessing some of the services in their spending plans through their financial management service. And so this directive was really to try to clarify some of how you can access the things in your spending plan. And so one of the things that was really important that this directive did is it split apart, it defined 2 different types of providers that you would have potentially. And what they pulled out was a local business or community resource from a typical self-determination program service provider. Now, why is this important? Well, we have some financial management services who wanted everybody to, and I hate this term, quote, I'm putting this in quote, vendor with them. What they were really doing was signing up as providers. So even if it was a local karate studio, they wanted them to sign up with them. So what this directive said was, look, we've defined local businesses and community resources as businesses that are open to the public, to everybody, and that the financial management service should pay that business in the way they typically are paid. So that means if they typically are paid first of the month for, let's say you want to take a music class and they get paid first of the month with a credit card for that month, they could do that. So the other argument we got from some financial management services is we can't pay ahead. We have to pay in arrears. So this was really making spending plan services inaccessible for a lot of people. So um, in other words, what they're saying is they don't need to, quote, vendor with the financial management service. This is specifically these local businesses, community resources. Now, there's a little caveat to this. When I asked DDS and said, well, then are you saying that the financial management services, if a local business's typical payment is credit card, do they have to use a credit card? And their answer was no. That financial management services are private businesses, so they can make their own policies. What this directive says is that they can use credit cards and they can pay in advance. So I don't want you to run to your financial management service and slam this directive down and say, you have to pay with a credit card. That's what it says. But what this does tell you is, if you are new and coming into self-determination, or you are thinking about changing financial management services, ask these questions. Do you pay with a credit card? If you have these types of services, make sure the financial management service that you're using will do these things. And again, this is a private industry, and if everybody walks away from the people who won't pay for things that way, we can also make change that way. Doesn't mean we're not going to, at Disability Voices United, are still not going to continue to promote that they require this. The second part, the second group, was called SDP service providers, self-determination program service providers. They defined it as people who are paying through invoicing. Now, there was a little gray area when we really started pushing DDS of what makes you a service provider and not a local business, right? And so there was not perfect clarity here. So this is something that we're going to continue to have to figure out. A good example, though, that we do know is somebody like an independent facilitator, or somebody who provides services specifically for somebody with a disability, somebody who invoices. So like if my son uses Easter seals for customized employment, they would be considered an SDP service provider. They turn in invoices. So this directive says that they created a sample invoice, what they want these invoices to look like. And so it's not that far off from what most of the financial management services were already requiring for invoices. But if you are an independent facilitator, you now need to be showing hourly hourly rates on your invoices. If you are a current vendored service like an Easter Seals, or somebody who is currently vendored with the regional center, they're not requiring them to alter their invoicing style. They said anybody who is a current regional center can continue to invoice the way they do. Then they also made two comments. One was that the invoices are paid directly to the provider, and that goods cannot be purchased by these providers. And they cannot reimburse a provider for goods. So I want you to know that their intent was not, let's say you want to sign up with a karate studio and they include a uniform. That would be fine. So anything like if it's tied to what that service is, that it's not really separating out a different purchase. What I think they were really trying to get away from was, let's say, you were going to take an art class and you didn't have a computer, and that art company said, well, why don't we just buy your computer for you and we can just bill it on your invoice? That is what they're trying to avoid, because they need to make sure that it's in your spending plan, that it was part of your IPP. So they want to make sure that these goods and services are federally reimbursable. So that one I think is kind of understandable. I'm going to go to the next. So the super quick, this was that last minute directive that just came out a couple days ago. It was a very quick one, and it was just to clarify, when did that updated invoice need to start? So the independent facilitators were saying, at what point do we need to be using this new example? So that they had an enclosure of a sample invoice. And so that's what this directive said. By March 31st, after March 31st, any of the invoices have to match that sample. So that was quick and easy. We're going from easiest to hardest. So the next one, this is the second directive that we're going to talk about, actually technically third directive we were going to talk about. And this was the one on financial management service transition supports. This was dated December 22nd, 2023. Again, if you want the full directive, it's in the chat, a link to it in the chat. This is important because what it did, it removed the financial management service from the 099 vendorization. So let me explain what that is. The support services for somebody who is transitioning into the self-determination program has the opportunity to utilize a person-centered planner and a self-directed supports. Now, we've always called these people in the past independent facilitators. So that's most people will know them as independent facilitators. This now is a vendored service. 099 is a vendored service, and it was for 40 hours to help that transition process after you finished your person-centered plan until you transitioned in. So like your budget development, your spending plan development, all of those things. And those 40 hours were supposed to be split somehow between the financial management service and the independent facilitator. They never explained how that split was supposed to happen. There was a lot of confusion around it. So this was the answer to that problem, was they pulled the financial management services out of it. They are no longer going to be 099 vendored. They are going to be able to be paid for those transition services. They can be paid for the initial, when you first go in to self-determination. They can be paid if you transfer between financial management services, and they can be paid if you transfer to a different regional center. And they will be paid whatever their typical monthly fee is from your spending plan. You know, it sets with what the rate is, what their monthly rate is. They can bill the first 3 months. So they'll basically double bill the first 3 months of your plan. Now, this is all paid for by the regional center. You do not have to increase your spending plan for this, so you don't have to worry about it. This is kind of more informational. I don't want as participants you to have to worry too much about this, because this is stuff that, I don't want you to worry about how your financial management service is getting paid or how your independent facilitator is getting paid so much. Just this is for your understanding of what's going on. The other piece that this directive did is it kind of spelled out what they expect the financial management service to provide for this money that they're paying. And there were some key things in here that you as participants should know that your financial management service should be providing these kinds of supports. One is to educate and coach the participants on employment laws, overtime rules, timesheet requirements, insurance requirements. So we get tons of questions about those, and we know that your financial management service should be helping you with all of these things, educating you with all of these things. They should be making sure that you are reviewing your monthly reports, and that they should be helping and coaching you with adjusting your spending plans. They put budgets and spending plans, but I think it's really more spending plans. They should be helping you with those spending plans. They also said that part of the financial management service transition supports that they're getting paid for is to help you with the background checks, and for educating you on creating job descriptions, reviewing applications, interviewing, hiring, and terminating staff. Now, I will say personally, I know for a fact that most independent facilitators are doing this role right now. They're doing most of these roles right now. And so it's important to know that, hey, your financial management service is being paid for this. So make sure that they're helping you with these things. I have a question whether they can really help with job descriptions and reviewing applications, because some of the financial management services are not even in California. So, but I do think that they should be helping you with the process of hiring somebody and terminating staff. You should know what the process is with your financial management service before you let somebody go, to make sure that you're following the rules. And so they should make sure you know how to do that beforehand. They are also responsible for making sure to train you and your employees on EVV, which is the electronic, oh shoot, visit verification.
Yes.
Thank
the
you.
Electronic visit.
See, I can't even keep up with all the acronyms. Which is the making sure that somebody who says they arrived somewhere actually did show up there. So it's a kind of a electronic checking in. So they should be educating your staff if they are required to do EVV, how to do it. And then the financial management service should be verifying if the things in your spending plan meet the HCBS final rule compliance. One of the things that we asked DDS was, well, is it the regional center or the financial management service who is responsible for that final rule compliance? And they didn't really have a direct answer, kind of said everybody is. So we need more clarification on this. So that is something we are following up with them. And then the last thing that they are responsible for and that they get paid for is basically working with your regional center. So talking about their e-billing, their purchase of service processes, and the transition process. So the things that they're doing in the background without the participant. Now comes the big one. Everybody take a deep breath, because this is a big one, and I'm going to take a sip of coffee. I just bashed coffee on me. Okay. This directive comes after a series of directives, and it is called the Updated Initial Person-Centered Plan and Pre-Enrollment Transition Supports Guidance from December 2023. Again, it's in the chat. Even the title is huge. This was a very big directive. So I'm going to give you the key points to this. And so starting February 29th, 2024, you must use, well, I'm going to go back a little bit. Up to this point, you had two options of how you got support services as you were transitioning into the self-determination program. So I want to emphasize, anybody in this room who is in the self-determination program, go and get a cup of coffee or relax. You do not have to worry about this piece. This is really for people who are transitioning in. This is who it's going to impact. So up until this point, you would be offered $2,500, and that would include your person-centered plan and all the services that were needed to help you transition in. And you could hire somebody who was not vendored to do this. They have changed that plan, and they changed it a while back, and they had to keep postponing implementing it. So this is where the implementation phase is right now. And what they are saying is that after February 29th, you will get up to $1,000 for a person-centered plan. You can hire anybody that you want to do this. They do not need to be vendored. They do need to have training in person-centered planning. They will invoice for your person-centered plan when they deliver it. So you'll pick somebody, you'll work with them. I know a couple regional centers want to know beforehand who you're working with. So do check with your service coordinator. But they won't invoice until the plan is turned in. And they will invoice hourly for that, but there is no set rate. Now, this person could be the same person as the next one, or it could be a separate, somebody who just does person-centered plans. And this you're going to hear the term 024 all the time. This is the 024. So our next one, that next section. So you finished your person-centered plan. Now you need supports with the budget, creating the budget and having the IPP and creating your spending plan, even picking your financial management service and getting set up with them, looking for services, all of those things. These are now called self-directed supports. This is a vendored service. The regional center requires them to be vendored. these are most of the people who are vendoring for this were formerly called independent facilitators. That independent facilitator could also do your person-centered plan. They can do this section. They have up to 40 hours. There is a set rate for this, and each regional center has a different rate, but it's all somewhere around $50. And the way that you would get this service is you would have an IPP meeting or an email to your service coordinator and say, I want to have self-directed supports, and they will create an addendum. Your self-directed support person will say, we think it's going to take us 40 hours, 30 hours, kind of like you would any other vendored service in the traditional system. You'll sign an addendum and they will create a purchase of service for your self-directed support person. This did answer the question. There were questions out there before. Could this be remote or in person? So they said yes, it is up to the participant how they want it, what's most convenient for them. And this is hourly invoiced. The other two things that they kind of had were some exceptions to this, that a current 024, so that after we talked about that February 29th deadline, before you had to use somebody who was vendored, if you're halfway through the process and you'd already selected your independent facilitator, they were already billing under 024, you can go ahead and finish. You can actually even start somebody right up until that. As long as you start before February 29th, you can bill under that 024, as long as that is the participant's choice, that's how they want to do it. And then the other exception was, because there were problems with with independent facilitators being vendored taking so long, what they said is that if the independent facilitator has applied for 099, then they can continue to provide services. They can continue to bill 024 until that vendorship goes through. Now, as a participant, I don't want you to worry about this too much. The only thing that you need to do if you're new and you're trying to go in is that you would ask the person who you want to help you, that independent facilitator, can you work at my regional center? Are you able to provide self-directed supports or independent facilitation for my regional center? So that's all you have to know as a participant. It's really the independent facilitators who have to work all of this billing out. Oh, hold on, I went the wrong direction. I'm like, I thought we already talked about that. There we go. So beginning March 1st of 2024, the regional centers are going to have to start reporting on this. Their number of 099 vendors, the number of 099 applications, and the actions to increase supports. Now, I think that the fact that they're mandating that we have to start using 099 supports, they don't know how many we have vendored in the state, because they're not even required to report until March 1st. It's kind of after the fact to start reporting before they mandate to see if they even have enough providers out there. So with that said, I know that I have been supporting independent facilitators to seek 099 vendorization because I was concerned about who was going to provide these supports for participants in that break. We knew there were tons of problems with it, but it was just who's going to help the participants during that time. After these directives, I have changed my opinion, and all of DVU has come about to agree that we are advising that independent facilitators do not seek 099 vendorization, because we do not think that it is in the participants' best interest at this point. And I'm going to give you the reasons that we have for this, that we have come up with this. One, we believe there is a conflict of interest. If you are, let's say I am a self-directed support person helping you with your budget, and there's a disagreement in that budget, and we decide to file a fair hearing, and I am supporting you during this fair hearing process. Because I am vendored by the regional center, they have access to any of my files. they can request my files. And this creates a huge, huge conflict of interest. Same case if we help file a 4731 complaint. They could come and look at what what our records say. So we think that there is a very large conflict of interest. We believe that, so if you look, attached to this directive was the service definition of what a self-directed support is. Now, they had released the service definition in prior directives, and we did not catch that when they put this definition in, they changed the definition from independent facilitator, because if you look at the law for independent facilitator, it includes advocacy. And if you look at the service definition for self-directed supports, they removed the term advocacy. So this is another key reason why we are not supporting people becoming 099 vendored, because a regional center could easily say, you cannot advocate for these people because that's not part of what you are being paid for. We believe that this limits the participants' access to supports because there are so few 099 vendored. There are regional centers that don't have any right now. There are regional centers who have expressed that they will limit how many participants a independent facilitator could have. So they will be able to control. They could even say to a participant, here's the vendor you can use. So it really infringes on participant choice and access to these supports. And finally, it really does increase the potential for disparity. And because what we do know is that some independent facilitators who were not offering 099 vendorization were offering fee for service, meaning private pay service. And there are certainly this should not be a service that some people can access because they can afford it and some people can't because they cannot afford it. So we want to make sure that we do not have this disparity come up. So we have a recommended solution for this. We believe that DDS should provide a non-vendored self-directed support under participant-directed services. The main reason that DDS gave for wanting to vendor the independent facilitators was under 024, it is not federally reimbursable, meaning the state was footing the whole bill. And that's a reasonable understanding that they want it to be federally reimbursable. But participant-directed services are federally reimbursable. So this gives you an option. It gives an option where it removes that conflict of interest. It will continue to provide choice, so people could select whoever they want as their independent facilitator to work as this participant-directed support and under participant-directed services. And then the second thing we're requesting at the same time is that they update the service definition to include advocacy. We want to make sure that the self-directed supports are able to provide advocacy for the community. So that is my very long-winded reason of why we are not asking independent facilitators to hold off. I also want you to know that Judy did a public record. Thank you. I was trying to decide what PRA stood for. Public Records Act request for DDS, and she asked for a list of all of the 099 vendored people in the state. And what came back was a list of 8 people on the list, 2 of which were financial management services. That is just unconscionable that they would put in a mandate that we have to use these services when they don't have the structure in place. There is no infrastructure to do this at all. So what does that mean? So we want to give you some tools if you want to help advocate for this. So the first is we have a directive brief that kind of one pager that explains all the stuff I just talked to you about. That's going to be in the chat. So you can get a copy of this directive brief. We're asking that you share this with your local volunteer advisory committees, that you share it with anybody that you think is going to make a difference, right? Also, we're asking that participants here can send a letter of support for those participant directed services. And we will also put in the chat just a very simple sample letter of what you could send, because I know that a lot of people, if you asked me to send a support letter, like I wouldn't know what to write. So we did give you a sample letter. If you would like to use that, you can put it in your own words, however you like. And on that sample letter, it has the email address that it would go to. We also recommend ask your local volunteer advisory committee to draft a letter requesting participant directed services and that they update that service definition. So that was the whole presentation. I know talking about directives is not the most exciting thing on the planet, but this was a three very detailed ones to go through. I'm sure there are lots of questions. I see in the chat 74 up there. I don't see the chat as I'm talking because I will get sidetracked. So I think that it's a great time to get to questions. So when we do questions, you can either raise your hand or we will go through the questions that were in the chat already, and we will alternate between the chat questions and the raised hands. So
Christiana, I want to address one of the questions that I've seen asked by a couple of independent facilitators. They have said, wow, it's a little late, like for us, for DVU to recommend not becoming a 099 vendor because they've already done it. What I would say is that it's fine if you've already become vendored, but it's really up to you about whether you want to move forward, which is sort of risky because of all of the things that Christiana said, which is that conflict of interest, that you may not be able to actually show up to an IPP and represent your client. And that theoretically a regional center could say you cannot be paid to be here because advocacy is not in your definition. If you don't necessarily have to pull your vendorship, that's one thing you could do, or you could also just let the regional center know that while you are vendored, you are not taking any clients. That list that Christiana told you about that we got from DDS, those were the list of 6 independent facilitators or 6 individuals or companies that are providing this self-directed service support that have really actively been using it and gotten paid to do it. There are actually more than that are vendored. It's just a vendor doesn't become a real vendor until they're actually through the system, have sent in an invoice and gotten paid. So at this point, or at least when we got that list, which is maybe 6 weeks ago, there were only 6. There might be more. There's one other question that I want to address about the advocacy. So they changed the definition of what the self-directed supports are by rewording the definition in this new directive. If you were on any of the calls that DDS had last week, you would have heard Susie Rickwarth, the head of DDS, the DDS Self-Determination Office, say, well, we didn't change the definition. The old definition still stands. And that's just not the way the world works, because they actually put in a new definition in this new directive, and they never explicitly said, but the old things still apply. We're not getting rid of the old things, but we're putting some new stuff in, which of course, we know that we have faced regional centers who, we have 21 different regional centers, and they define things that are, to me, very clear 21 different ways. This one is actually confusing, and we absolutely predict that this will be handled very differently depending on the regional center, and sometimes even depending on the staff you're working on at the regional center. So, we believe that we are calling on DDS to clarify that, to make it very clear to regional centers that your person-centered or your transition person, what do they call it, Christiana?
Self-directed support.
Thank you. They keep changing the name, so I keep forgetting. The self-directed support person can come to your meetings, can help advocate for you, whether it's on your budget or your spending plan. So I know that there are a lot more questions in the chat, but I wanted to kind of address a couple of them.
And those were great questions. And I am 099 vendored. I have not billed yet under it, and I don't know that I will. Again, my opinion of it has evolved to this. And so I know that there are definitely some of my friends that are IFs out there that are like, oh my God, late to the game, woman. But again, Harvey, you have your hand up.
Oh, he needs to be unmuted.
Oh. It's under Connie Lapin if you're having problems finding the name.
Okay, there we go.
There we
Got
go.
it.
I'm Vanda White,
I'm Vanna.
but she's got black hair.
I'm Vanna Red.
Okay, right. Okay. West Side's advisory committee side, and the letter that was sent out was unanimous in protest. Let me give you over 50 years experience. I don't trust it. I think it will be absolutely unequivocally a barrier. Everybody knows what vendorization can be. I did download one of the applications to be vendored. It's up to 47 pages. Okay, subjective, a lot, education, background, all that. It is just another way to block, and it can be enrollment. Let's face it, all regional centers are not created equal. And you will be sending, I don't know what Midland's like now in their enrollment, but right now I know nationally, it's shameful what we've done in California. Oh, it's over 10 years old, the law. Remember that.
I agree with him.
She's been taught. No, I guarantee you she hasn't been taught.
Lisa, your hand is up. Oh, I think maybe Lisa's frozen. I think
think so.
Lisa might be frozen. We will come back to you. I promise you. Once we see you are wonderful.
I'm unmuted. I just have some comments. Determination in IF is not essential. Randy, how all of the discussion in your presentation will benefit clients? And if you want to find out which FMSs serve your particular area for self-determination, go to BDS's website and click on the name of your regional center, and you can find FMS providers in your area.
Good advice. And you know, I don't think that there is one FMS that's right for everybody, right? I think that there's different, figure out what is your services that you're going to need and which one is going to work right for you. And that's really important as you start out. Hold on one second.
Backward, because that's how it does it.
You cut out. I didn't hear the very beginning of that.
She's now
I-
muted. Okay, go ahead.
I said related to billing. Billing is done backwards because, or not backwards, but a month behind is because that's the way the state typically does certain billing unless some sort of new billing system is in place that I'm not aware of.
So that was really one of the keys from that billing directive, saying that if it's a local business, the FMS is permitted to pay ahead. So you're correct. Typically, what we hear is they use the term arrears. Everything is paid in arrears. And that was
Mhm.
a huge barrier if you want to purchase something in the community. And so that was a good thing. See, we can
Mhm.
embrace the good when good things do happen. Uh, thank you so much, Lisa. Jan, your hand is up.
There we go. Didn't let me unmute it first. Well, I thought it was just me, like, not being able to focus on anything in life, that I couldn't understand these. I mean, I'm glad you felt they were equally complicated. I'm so glad you guys were doing this today, because I thought, oh my goodness, how in the world are we going to move forward? The one thing I was going to say is a lot of those businesses want a credit card on file. And that is a big headache. And what FMS, who wants to put their credit, card on file? So I'm assuming that's not going to happen. Correct? I mean, that was one of my questions, is that whole credit card on file. And what about the policy that they're starting to push at the FMSs, where if that gym doesn't have, like, if you have 4 sessions a month that you're paying for and they don't allow for makeup sessions, then the FMS is pushing back and saying that they can't pay that particular business. So like a cooking class, it doesn't have a makeup class because, you paid for 4 weeks and they bought food for 4 weeks and they paid staff for 4 weeks. Any ideas on that one? Sorry.
There's I know. And you and I both read this thing like 20 times and just went, what did I just read? So it was very confusing. For the credit card piece, we have kind of a workaround that some people have used, which is they go and they get a paid Visa card, put $20 on it, put that down for the service, and then just make sure that your financial management service pays before the thing is due, because it'll bounce otherwise. But if, so we do have a lot of businesses that say we can't put you in here without leaving a credit card on.
Great idea.
So that's just a stopgap fix, but it's, whatever works. For the second piece, that's actually a newer one to me. I haven't heard that one. So
the makeup classes.
The makeup classes.
Main Carol's doing that.
Yeah, and again, I think that in some ways this directive says, well, if we're paying you can pay in advance, right? And so if somebody gets sick and they can't go to the class, they get sick and can't go to the class. I mean, and so I think in some ways this directive might address that, but it doesn't do so specifically. So I think that would be a great ask DDS to clarify that. So does that mean, if you pay for 4 classes, then, you're paying for the 4 classes. I know it's a hard one because Medi-Cal isn't going to want to pay for, if you don't show. But again, how else do we get? So there's just some things that they're going to have to figure out and work around.
Thanks.
Oh, you're very welcome. And so there was a question in chat. It was Christine Suther at 5:13 p.m. And she said, if you hold off on sending the 099 packet, how will you get paid after March 1st? So you would continue to bill under 024. So you can't hold off sending the packet. You would actually need to apply for vendorization as 099. They will give you a letter saying you have applied, and then you can bill under 024 until you become vendored. Talene's shaking her head. I think she has a different read on this. Go ahead and unmute.
Yeah, I'm going to chime in real quick because that's how I read it, Christiana, when you and I went over it together.
Mhm.
And we actually went to DDS and asked for clarification. And the clarification was that anyone can bill under 024 until the end of February, but you must have a plan in place with the IPP team on how things are going to roll out and the timeline, and everyone needs to be, it has to be very, very clear. So as long as you've got clear instructions on how it's going to be, anybody can do 024 billing until the end of February, or can take new clients on, even if it takes longer than February to finish. You don't have to
Yes.
finish by February.
Yes. So I think she might have been asking a different question. So because she said if you hold off on sending the 099 packet. So yes, you can, anybody can bill under 024 up until February 29th. You could start somebody new, which they're going to be regional centers that are like, no,
Right.
you can't start, but you can. That the directive says that. I think what she was saying is, how do you get paid after is because she says after March 1st. So if you put if you are,
Jan, that's my point. As long as you
I see what
started
you're
a
saying.
client by
If you-
February
I see what
29th,
you're saying.
right? As long as you start and you have a plan in place on how you're going, they don't want it to be endless forever billing, right? They don't want these things to drag out a year or 2 years. So they want to know that there is an actual plan in place that the IPP team has all come together and agreed. Then you can start a new client before the end of February, even though it will finish later and you'll bill later.
Yes.
So,
See, this is Talina and I have to work things through together. Go ahead, Judy.
so I just want to say something. And I saw Sunny write that same comment in the chat. If it's not in the directive, it's not real. I don't really care that DDS made a comment about this in some meeting with a bunch of independent facilitators. I already just saw that Carla Lehman said that she's already been asked by a regional center that if she wants a new client now, she must do 099. So that's just not the way things work in the state. If you want something to be clear, like on the advocacy piece, it must be written in the directive, because there are many regional centers who are not part of these conversations with DDS who are reading the directive to the letter. And so the fact that you heard that means nothing to me. DDS has to put it in writing.
So they did put the part for the transition piece. It's on page 4. And so it's saying if you, it's like 1, 2, 3 paragraphs down. So they kind of clarified it. And what they said was providers who do not submit a completed standardized vendor station pact as of March 20th, then they can only provide the pre-enrollment supports that they had already started, basically. So they can finish out whatever they're working on, and that they're going to work with the individual, with the team to come up. And I think the reason they had that, you got to come up with a plan, because as independent facilitators, we all know that we have some clients that it's been a year and it's kind of been silent, and the participant is dragging their feet. So I think that they want to know that there is a plan, an end in sight, that they don't want to drag it out forever. So they put that piece, that is in writing. And that they can continue to finish, and they called it under option A, and that means under 024. So, but that's just if you've started it prior to February 29th. I know that's why I said this is such a confusing one. We just, oh my gosh. Emily, your hand is up.
Hi, yes. Do you have an opinion on the requirement regarding invoicing when it comes to community businesses? Because the way I read that, it's clear that it says this does not apply, or we're not referring to community-based businesses or local businesses. However, when those invoices come across through an FMS, right, and come up for payment, as we know, up to this point, many FMSs have required local and community businesses to invoice if they've required them to vendor. And so the system is already set up that way. And so they're already going to continue that process most likely, especially if a lot of the FMSs, and they don't plan to so far, what I've heard from the FMSs directly, to use an alternate system. like Susie said, they may use an alternate, a typical system, but they don't have to. And so many of them are not changing that. They're doing the prepay and they might be doing that, but they're not going to change that process. So my concern is that invoices from typical businesses that have been told they need to do it that way via the FMS are going to continue billing them. And like you said, the 21 regional centers, as those things come across each FMS and are billed, it's not going to be clear to anyone necessarily, especially since the FMSs are not local, that those are local community businesses without putting some sort of caveat, maybe an asterisk and a statement. This is a local community business, something preemptively, so that we're not having a bunch of confusion where invoices are getting rejected. And then, with feedback that they need to do time by task and all of that other extra stuff that's now indicated by DDS. So I'm concerned that, yeah, typical businesses are going to be confused with quote SDP providers because if they continue to invoice, which many of them will, since that's the system they have. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I agree with you 100% because that was the thing that I was thinking was, well, if you've been in self-determination for a while and you've been working with these financial management services and you were able to convince that karate studio to invoice, they're now saying, well, those invoices need to be hourly. And it's like, well, it's just not going to work. And so there were a lot of questions at those meetings of like, well, then is it a local business and the back and forth. And so I think in their head, they kind of separated it out as local businesses kind of being paid by credit cards or other things, and then people who invoice. But as we know, there are local businesses that invoice now. So I wish I had a good answer for you. I don't have a good answer. That is just where it's just really unclear. What I would have liked to have seen is DDS to take a stance and say, you need to do this, FMSs, but they did not do that. But yeah, I think that clearing up what I think it kind of goes back to the thing of saying we need to really clear up what is a local business and what is a SDP service, and how do we identify those if they're both invoicing. I think that's a really good point, Emily. Christina, go ahead.
Hi, thanks. I want to jump back to the question about 099 and, the sort of after March 1st. If you are taking on a new client, so you don't have this, well, we started the services in February.
Mhm.
If you're taking on a new client and you decide not to 099 because of this conflict of interest issue, how do you get paid for those services?
You won't be. And that's really the problem. And that's why we're really asking for this push for everybody to advocate to get the participant directed in place. The other thing they can do is they can also extend it again. This is the third extension on not requiring 099. So, they don't have the infrastructure in place. And so at this point, if you don't 099, it's after February 29th, it's March 1st, then if you are going to provide those self-directed supports, then you will not get paid at this point. So that's a huge problem.
Let me,
I was just going to say, because I assume DDS doesn't act quickly, and they might not get a directive or something out in time for those self-directed services, right?
So Christina, DVU first and foremost is an advocacy organization. We don't take personal clients. We don't serve individuals. What we try to do is to move the state and regional centers to do the right thing. My feeling is if a bunch of folks are out there doing 099 and sort of give in to the system and the way it was created, then we're not going to win this advocacy argument. We're going to, DDS will come back to us and say, look, there's all these people who are doing this. We know they're unhappy. We're hearing complaints. We know they're not able to show up and actually advocate, but people are still doing it. DDS works very slowly, except when they want to work fast. Believe me, they can work very quickly when they want to. And at a minimum, what we're hoping to do through these letters that Christiana talked about, I put in a letter that Westside Regional Center is sending from their local advisory committee to DDS in the chat. What we're doing is we're unifying to say, this is not going to work. And it would not be hard for DDS to put out a directive that just said, okay, we're now extending the requirement from March 1st to May 1st to give them a couple of more months to get the participant directed services in place. Getting participant directed services in place is not fast because it requires them to go to the federal government and get a new service code added, which is fine. We'll give them the time, but we do not want this requirement to go into place until that option exists. So, obviously this is up to you as the community of whether you want to provide, you as a facilitator want to provide 099 services, and you really can feel free to go ahead. But if you have any of the concerns that Christiana shared earlier about this is going to be a conflict, this is not going to provide real independent facilitation for people, that you will become a vendor of the regional center and therefore be beholden to the regional center. If you've ever been in the traditional system and gotten upset at some of your service providers because they seem to agree with the regional center against you or your family member, that is what you're facing with this particular setup. And so we feel we need to hold strong, and hopefully, I honestly feel confident we're going to win this battle. I really do. We have, Christiana and I have personally met with DDS like 3 times in the last 2 weeks. Like, that does not generally happen. So I think they're listening to us. And I think that we will hopefully get what we need.
Thank you. Yeah, I so appreciate what you're doing, because I never really wanted to get vendored with Regional Center, but I was under the impression that we were being encouraged to, so that there would be people in place to provide these services, right? But I don't love the idea of being vendored. I don't love that risk of conflict of interest and all that. So thank you for, the work that you're doing to get that rectified.
It's not just the conflict of interest. Remember, as independent facilitators, if you are a vendor, you're going to be required to have such a significant amount of insurance. In some regional centers, it could cost thousands and thousands of dollars, and you may not make that much more in a year. So having the participant directed service approach, you will not be a vendor. You will not be under the same obligation to have sexual molestation insurance, which can cost up to $2,000 a year. So I really strongly encourage everyone to kind of stay on this page, but you obviously can do what you need to do.
Carla, I was actually just reading your question and realized your hand's up. Go ahead. Oh, wait, you unmuted for a second and then muted again. There you go.
Hi. One of the things that I wanted to ask is for DBU to also help for advocate for reimbursement, because many times there are classes, or there are like even emergency services that they need to be purchased right away. There is like a deadline, and people cannot wait, and like the FMS take weeks many times to pay for a service for a class. So then many times there are participants that they lose that spot because of having to wait. So I feel like if in the spending plan, the service is listed there, and why not could be provided a reimbursement. that is one thing that I think I've been asking for many years. I think is very important. The other thing, what you said regarding the credit card, not all the FMS do it, like buying the gift card. A lot of the FMS, they're not doing it, and they said that the regional centers are not allowing it, or DDS is not allowing it. I feel like maybe they think they're gonna take the gift card and do, I don't know, go shopping, so they didn't allow that. Even when they can provide, they have to provide like an invoice or things like that. Like there are some FMS that they were doing it that now they're not doing it anymore. So that's another thing that I feel like if reimbursement would be an option, then the participant could pay with a credit card and then submit the invoice and get reimbursed,
So for the gift card, I agree, and they have tightened up on that because what prevents you from giving your gift card as a present to somebody else, right? And so they do want to make sure the services are going to that person. The idea was not actually when we needed the credit card on file, I didn't ask the regional center to do it. I literally went to the grocery store and bought a prepaid like Visa card for like $20, and then I just use that card for any of the ones they want one on file. So it's not one of their cards. It's just a Visa card numbered to hold the space, and then making sure they pay it prior to the business.
Some FMS were doing that before, where they buy a gift card like that, like the gift card in the supermarket or whatever, but they don't.
They won't do it now. Yeah. Like I said, you can get one for like $5. You just get a very small one, and then the participants can put that on for the businesses.
Yeah, but the FMS won't reimburse the participant for that money, right? Let's say if you buy one and then you put it in the swimming lesson, so every month they get paid.
Oh, no. I'm not saying put the whole amount. I'm saying you buy like $5 on that gift card, on that Visa card.
Yeah.
And you put that on with the swimming class. So they have a card on file, but they couldn't charge to that card because there's only $5 on it. And then you just make sure they pay before they try to charge to that card.
Yeah.
So that was our little workaround for the card on file.
That's true. Yes, I did have happened once, but then there are some of the providers that they realize, oh, this is a gift card. I don't know how the system, and then they don't allow that.
Yeah.
That's another thing that.
Yeah. So, they give us a blockade and we try to go around it, and then they'll give us another one and we'll try to go around it. So our hope is that they are now, they can't say we can't use credit cards because the directive just said you can. So, but again, are they going to adjust? We just don't know.
The reimbursement, that would be a huge help for a lot of the last minute type of things. And so people, because many times people have to sign up for classes on Sundays afternoons, or or like this is, and then if you don't do it at that time, you lose your spot, and then the FMS is not going to be there doing it. So
yeah, exactly. So there's that, as they said, which I thought was good, was, that nobody should take those directives when it did talk about the reimbursement for the goods. They said, this is not a directive on reimbursement. Don't take this as a directive on reimbursement. So I think it's in their queue of things they are thinking about and talking about. So, but I haven't heard where they're going to land with this.
Okay, one of the FMSs now is taking that as a directive, and they were giving reimbursements, and they're like, oh, now we cannot do it anymore. So a lot of the clients are getting affected because of these.
Yeah. So, we should go back to that FMS and say, let's sit down with DDS and talk about it, because that's not what they said it intended. So it's something we can maybe help advocate. So we'll talk.
Yeah. Christiana? There's a bunch of questions in the chat that we haven't gone to. Can I throw them out to you?
Absolutely. I was just going to jump in, but go ahead.
So Rachel asked, what happens with an FMS like Mainsail that now requires a cancellation policy to pay in advance to refund in full if a consumer does not utilize the service? This is highly problematic for things like paying in advance for summer camp.
That was the one that I think, was it somebody had asked earlier that this is kind of a new one to us. I'm just hearing about it like very recently from Mainzel. This is one of their new things. So don't really have an answer for you on that of how to deal with this yet.
Yeah, I'm wondering if Rachel or another person can explain what they mean by a cancellation policy. Like, are they requiring you to have cancellation insurance? I mean, that you cannot sign up for something that you can't cancel and get a full refund for. I'm not exactly sure what you mean. Okay, so that's what Carla's saying. Okay, so it means you can't cancel anything that doesn't have a full refund involved. Well, obviously that limits choice and we need to advocate against that. That's really quite a problem. I know there was another one I wanted to throw out at you.
Oh, here is one. Stella had said, if we don't do 099, how will we be able to work with new clients after March 1st? So remember the 099 is only a small section of that transition. So you can still do person-centered planning, and you could still do ongoing services once people are in self-determination. It would just prevent that one section of self-directed supports if you do not 099. So that's where you would not be able to get paid during that little section.
So Cindy has a question unrelated to our subject today, but we're always open for many questions. Our budget ran out of money for 2 codes 2 months before the year ended. We were given a rate increase in July, but those funds were not sent to our FMS because they'd say I didn't sign the spending plan. I spoke with my service coordinator dozens of times about the situation, and they never mentioned the need for the spending plan for the additional money. Still, the money wasn't sent, and we need that money to pay 3 employees that haven't been paid since the beginning of December. My regional center is saying it's too late to create a spending plan for that extra money, but we are 10 days away from the end of the year. I need help as my employees need to get paid.
Oh my goodness. I'm not sure if you're working with an independent facilitator, but a good independent facilitator would be very helpful right now. I would absolutely get the ombudsperson's office involved, because I will say that when you're CCing the ombudsperson's office, it seems to get people moving a little bit if they're stuck. I would also, whoever you're talking to, move up to the next level at your regional center. If you're talking to your service coordinator, talk to their supervisor, talk to their manager, talk to the participant choice specialists, move up the food chain. If you have people who are not getting paid, it's very, very serious. The other thing that I highly recommend is immediately call an emergency IPP meeting, because that gives them a deadline of that they have to meet with you soon. To put it in writing and request that emergency IPP. So I hope those things help you to get this unjammed.
We could move on to Cindy while I continue to look for new questions.
Hi, Cindy.
Hi. So, thanks everybody for all of their opinions, and so many people here in their advocacy on behalf of our clients. I'm just going to tell you, I'm tired. I think I said this at one other meeting. I'm tired of getting a directive that says, you need to do 099, and then I'm spending hours upon hours trying to find the right insurance that I'm going to need that's going to satisfy my regional center, my regional center satisfaction, and the forms to fill out, and then trying to decide, is it worth it? Is it not? Am I going to make enough money? But my fear as a facilitator and running a business at the time was, if I don't do this 099, then I'm not going to have much of a business starting in January. And so I better get it done. And then I get it done, right? And I go, okay. And then they come back with, well, now wait a minute, and then honestly, I'll be honest with you, it makes me feel a little foolish, right? It makes me feel like, I should not be so quick to respond when things are requested of me, when it's with DDS, that I shouldn't be so quick to say, let me follow the rules that are being provided to me so that I can continue on a business. But I mean, that's like a whole thing, right? I probably need therapy for that. But honest to God, what it does take away from is supporting clients. It absolutely does. The sheer amount of hours that not just myself, but I look around at so many people here that I know that I've worked with, that we have spent hours upon hours trying to make sense of these directives. And it's almost as if it's our job to help them make sense of their directives, because they don't ask anybody who's got boots on the ground ahead of time of what are some of the things that might be difficult about this? You know, what are some of the things? So I'm one of those 099s, right? That's out there. I have not built anything 099. I've had people calling me, you know, can you provide services? And I, you know, with the regional centers, I feel like now I have to reach out to the regional center to say, you know, somebody's connected with me and I'll be billing under 024. Is that acceptable to you? Right? Because what I hear other people saying is there's some regional centers are saying no. So that's all. I mean, it's more of a rant. Listen, there's been people that have gone years ahead of the advocacy that I'm doing now, do you know, that have been doing it for a lot longer, you know, and kudos to you guys for doing that. But in the end, this takes away from clients.
I agree. And, you know, I feel you, Cindy, I'm in the same boat, you know, but I will say that the one thing that from the independent facilitators that I know and respect, we've always put the participants first. And so, you know, I think that, you know, and that's why a lot of us did 099 to begin with, because we thought, okay, but you know, when there is a line that they can cross where it's like, okay, this isn't good for the participants, you know, and that's really where we're at so it's kind of not good for anybody, you know, at this point. So, you know, we have to draw the line, but yeah, I feel ya. Rachel, how are you doing? Rachel, are you able to? Oh, there you go.
Yes. Okay. Sorry, it wouldn't let me unmute. So what I wanted to, just following up on my question about what Mainzel is saying and the restrictions that they're putting in, like, I'm happy to read you a very short email that they wrote me, but basically the summary is, in order for us, this is their language from Mainzel, in order for us to pay ahead, we would need confirmation that if the service doesn't get used, we can get paid back. So that's extremely problematic for like a camp that has like a no refund policy. Like, you miss a day of camp, they're not going to refund you for that day. And, you know, you miss something like that, like it was said, like a cooking class, and, you know, they already bought the supplies and they already have the staff, they're not going to reimburse you. And how do we, I mean, I've talked to Mainzel ad nauseum at this point, like, that's not practical. That's not going to work for mom and pop businesses. That's just not how the real world works. Then people will just ask for refunds all day for all the sick days they missed, and the business is going to go under. It's just not practical. So what is I know you don't have the answer, but what is the resolution in this particular circumstance? They can't require that they be refunded at 100%. That's even a consumer that doesn't have needs wouldn't have that wouldn't apply to them either. So we're being treated differently because of the additional needs.
Well, and that's a really interesting point, because their wording was that they should treat that local business the way they typically bill, right? And like you're saying, if their typical billing is you pay for it, and if you don't show up, you don't show up, then it's kind of going against that directive. I actually do remember seeing that email now that you brought it up. And I believe in it, it also said that if the regional center doesn't pay for it, they could ask the parent to pay for it. And that was a huge red flag for me. And this is absolutely something we are going after, of, you know, participants and should never, if something happens with your traditional system service, your respite care worker doesn't get paid, they don't get to come after participants. In the traditional system, they don't get to come after you in the self-determination program system. That's just, it's ridiculous. So that is absolutely something we have to tackle head on. So
Yeah, so I don't know if, you know, you guys can assist with that in any way, but that's definitely a problem that I'm having, you know, as an IF, and also for my clients and my own child, I'm having this issue, so.
Judy looked like one. Go ahead.
I'm not trying to defend this, but this is what the government would say. And when I say the government, I mean both the state government and the federal government. And this is what happens in the traditional system. The traditional service providers only get paid when they actually provide the service. So if you go to a day program and you call out sick that day program does not get paid because you didn't come in that day. It's obviously a really big issue, but that is the way government works. These are taxpayer dollars, and we shouldn't be paying for things when services are not being utilized. So just like in the traditional system, the traditional service providers do not get paid if they are not working for a client. It's the same thing in STP. So I know that this is a problem. It is a particular problem when it comes to a big purchase like a summer camp, but that is why we are where we are. And what Mainsail is trying to do is to protect themselves, to say, we're afraid that if you don't go to that summer camp, that we're not going to get paid back by DDS or by the regional center. Sorry. And so they're then going to be out all that money, not you. And so, you know, we have to be quite conscious of it. And what it means, folks, is that you may need to pick and choose what it is you use your STP funds for. And you may need to say, okay, this summer camp tuition may not work in the SDP, and we may need to pay for that privately. However, the staff member who will be the one-on-one support help for my child to be at that summer camp can be paid for through this, because they'll only get paid if they work the hours at the summer camp. So it may mean you pay for some things out of your pocket, and other things you shift onto the self-determination program budget. So I'm trying to come up with solutions, but I just do not think we're going to get out of this one.
Lourdes, we have 2 minutes. I'm going to let you ask the last question, as long as you keep it quick.
So my comment to that is there are parents, there are families, there are participants who are overspending money. And we have to also address that issue.
I agree, Lourdes. People have a responsibility as a self-determination participant or family member to be checking your monthly statements from your FMS. Number one, to make sure they're accurate. And number two, to make sure you are not overspending your budget. And we know that that's hard. That's why a lot of people use independent facilitators once they're in the program to monitor their budget, and they become experts on figuring those things out. So yes, there are things that are harder in the self-determination program, but there are people to support you on that. And you've got to make sure you don't overspend your budget, because you will be liable for it.
And with that, we are right on time. I want to thank our interpreters. I know that this probably wasn't an easy one. That was just very intense. And so we will see everybody at our next Connect next month. Thank you so much for coming, and we will see you soon.